Cooper Flagg is officially off to the NBA. It's time for John Shire and Duke to completely reset.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listener of the watch of the day to get your Tuesday going the right way. Reminder, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all you everydayers joining us, and of course, all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me on the show today for the second time, but first time in studio, we'll call it, our guy DeShaun Tate, national college basketball analyst. Great stuff, my man. We chatted for the first time with you on the show during the Final Four. It was great having you come to us from the Alamo Dome, but now you're back in your home territory. And brother, I know we're going to dive into it, but just want to say it's great to have you as part of the show.
No, listen, I appreciate you for having me as well. And I mean, listen, that the whole Final Four experience was fantastic. It was outstanding. And I had a good feeling that there was going to be quite some things to talk about following up the Final Four. I had a feeling that the road doesn't just end at the Final Four for some reason, as these years have just become more and more about so many different things, which I'm sure we're going to get ready to tap into here in a second. But no, thank you so much for having me. And it's been a little while coming, but I'm glad we could finally afford to make it happen.
Yes, sir. It's so good. Folks, make sure you go give DeShaun a follow at Tates Hoops. Sorry, I got to get on my words.
A little bit of a tongue twister there for you, Isaac. It is for most people, so I've got to try and work on changing that. Either that or I just love hearing people butcher it, so I just keep
squirm. I know. Look, I'm just going to sit around after this and Tates Hoops. I'm going to get it in five. I'm going to say it 5 times fast, and I'll be ready to go. So, guys, coming up on the show today, first off, you need to know the portal closes tonight at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, so when you wake up on Wednesday morning, if your guy hasn't entered the portal, you're safe and you can breathe a sigh of relief. We have several decommits in the incoming freshman class, 3 of them at 3 blue blood schools. We want to unpack that. Rick Pitino gets a big time backcourt guard, and Ian Jackson coming over from North Carolina. But he thinks he's got his new point guard. Is that true? Plus, in other North Carolina news, Ven-Allen Lubin enters the transfer portal to stay at North Carolina. What? We'll talk about that coming up later on the show. But first, DeShaun, there's nowhere else we can start today's show than the fact that the presumptive number 1 2025 NBA draft pick is officially off to the NBA. DeShaun, here's where I want to start with you, man.
Okay.
It felt like some people, because Cooper kind of floated around. He's like, should I stay? Look, let's be honest. Was this guy ever really going to even remotely consider staying in Durham for a second year?
Cooper Christ. No, I don't think so, actually. And it just didn't really make a whole lot of sense to even consider such things. Like when you're talking about going in, being a lock for the first round, if there's even a such thing as that anymore, because I know that there's so often times that we hear guys being considered a quote unquote lock just to find out on draft night that they made one of the worst decisions by listening to the wrong people and so on and so forth within their camps and what have you. But no, I think if you're having realistic conversations about being a lottery pick or even potentially slightly after a lottery pick, anything within that, I think you got to go numero uno. I don't even think that there's much conversation to really even have. I think that some people I like the idea of things, maybe not actually doing it, but like an idea. I feel like he probably liked the idea and probably did, according to from what I've heard, saying something along the lines of this, the most fun that he's ever had or something along those lines. College will do that to you. The collegiate will do that to you, all the co-ed fun stuff there. But no, I think that if if we were having conversations about guys who could potentially make the same amount of money and maybe wouldn't be guaranteed the same type of opportunities, or maybe even potentially be in the face of a franchise, anytime you have generation title attached and linked to you, that puts a different perspective on things. If that was an exception, I could probably see him coming back. But much like Zion, who probably wanted to stay too, there was no way that he was going to be able to come back.
Dude, that is hilarious that you brought. That was literally where I was going next. I remember Zion like rolling this around, DeShaun. I was like, Zion, what are you talking about, man? Like, if I'm Coach K, I'm literally shoving Zion out the door. Like, it's malfeasance for you to even consider staying around. And I would be a dumb coach to even consider letting you. I'm sure John is doing the same here with Cooper in his family. Despite, I remember Cooper looking at his parents one time after he came out of the game and gave it one of those like circle back. And I was like, come on, dude. We all know.
Yeah.
You got
it back.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you got to treat this situation. I think I remember seeing like a 30 for 30 or something with Calipari saying when DeJuan Wagner was talking about coming back, Coach Cal said, and I'm, paraphrasing a little bit here,
Sure.
Like, you're not going to have a place to come back to. So I don't know what you think you're about to do, but you won't have a place on this team. And it ended up being the best thing that's ever happened to him. Now, granted, again, an injury and whatever else, what have you, came shortly after that with Cleveland Cavaliers, and ended up being the best decision he had ever made by going pro. But yet still, injury or no injury in the future, I still think was just the best decision for someone like a DeJuan Wagner, which it was for Zion and will be for Cooper Flagg.
That's very well said. And I think is a good moment to move us on then to just like, obviously this is a college basketball show, but it is fun to think
this on the web.
It is fun to think about. Did you just hear that? I don't know what my Siri's doing. I don't know what
wants to get in on the college basketball talk. Had something to say about Cooper Flagg, apparently.
Get out of here, Siri. So I just want to think. Let's project what we think Cooper Flagg's NBA career will ultimately be. DeShaun, I've got like 4 potentials of what it could be: all-time great, perennial all-star, NBA starter, NBA backup. Which of those 4 do you think will be Cooper Flagg's reality?
I would probably go with, if there's a such thing, I'm gonna create a category here.
Oh, I love it. Bring it.
Just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna go with NBA starter plus. I think that we will see an all-star appearance. How many? I don't know. I think that we will see more than one. I don't know how many we will see consecutive from somebody like a Cooper Flagg. So I feel the best about saying, and everybody has a comparison for Cooper Flagg. For me, I'm looking more along the lines of, and not saying necessarily his game or what have you, which probably wouldn't be far off either, but as far as his career so far, which is not too shabby, especially for a guy who's been a number 1 pick also, kind of like an Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is a one-time all-star so far. We can get into who's the better defender and all that other type of stuff at a different time. But when you watch him play, is he a guy that shows up in your imaginary dictionary when you look under the definition of number 1 pick and all this other type of stuff? Maybe not. Certainly, maybe not generational player. I'm not sure I'm ready to go that far yet. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yep.
But I will say enough to say that he's somebody that I think could be worthy of a number 1 pick when we look back at it. I do think we'll see all-star appearances from him. Generational players and superstar players and all of that, I'm not ready to bite the cheese on that just yet. Isaac, what about you?
You know what's funny, DeShaun? That's right. I was like, I don't even like my own categories because I don't know that I'm ready to crown him a perennial all-star. But I think there will definitely be more than one. And so I don't know that I really have anything else to add other than the fact that I agree with you and I appreciate you creating an in-between category for us so that I could slot right in there as well. And look, he could go up, but we were talking Zion. We've seen what his body breaking down has done to him, right? The potential is all there, but it's just not been able to put it together. And so I'm really curious to see on Cooper. I want to see him be a more consistent shooter. I think he started to do more of that down the stretch of this past season at Duke. And I think he will continue to grow in that regard. But ultimately, I think the ability for his shot to grow will determine his ceiling at the NBA level, I think is where I would leave it with Cooper. So DeShaun, then that leads us to come back to Duke, because this is a college basketball show, obviously. We learned over the weekend, Nate Ament, who I thought for a long time was going to wind up at Duke, heads off to Tennessee. Shelten Henderson, we're going to talk more about him in just a second, but he decommits from Duke. And so now there is a little bit of a reset, because also Tyrese Proctor declared for the NBA over the weekend. And he, he's done. He's gone. He's out the door. He left no room for return. And so that means of last year's starting five, Tyrese Proctor's gone. Sion James is out of eligibility. Con Knippel's already in the draft. Cooper Flagg's in the draft. And we're just waiting on the inevitable announcement from Kamon Malawach, who was also going to be a lottery pick along with Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel, which is insane. But that said, DeShaun, Duke needs a whole new starting five next year. And I would hate to have to reset year after year after year, but that's what they're going to do. If you were projecting ahead, and I know there's still plenty more personnel to be gathered for the Blue Devils, I'm sure, but who would you stick in that starting lineup today?
I don't know. I mean, it's so tough. I feel like, just because I feel like this is a weird class in the sense of which everybody is going to have to earn their keep. Like, I feel like they're going to have a bunch of guys who can make a case for themselves. And I think this might be one of the first years, I mean, with the exception of the Boozer twins. I think both of them will be starters right off the bat. Those are the only ones that I feel really confident, like overly confident in saying are going to be locks.
Especially with Proctor out. I think that brings
especially with him out. Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's tough, but those are the only two that I feel really, really confident, like really, really good about being able to say should be, could be, and will be the starters in that Duke starting five.
Yeah. And I feel like and this is a big if Isaiah Evans is still at Duke next year, which he's got a day as this comes out, I think he's probably the starting two. I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Ngongba is the starting five, but you also then still, you've got multiple fives back. And so there's that as well. The player I think is not on the roster is Duke's starting small forward for next year. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody out of the portal winds up as Duke's starting three next year. That's just the one spot that I'm like, I think this guy's still out there somewhere waiting.
I can see that as well. I think, when you start talking about Isaiah Evans, I mean, obviously this is kind of like his time, if you will. This will be his opportunity. I felt like we saw something similar out of Mark Mitchell at one point in time, and it just really didn't stick well for him. But I'm just not sure if he's going to be it. Like, I think, again, I just think that everybody's going to have to earn their keep. And of course, the Boozers too, but I think that they are more equipped to be able to show that they are, more than, I guess, just capable of being able to not just own and claim that starting spot, but also keep that starting spot as well.
Yeah, man. It's going to be very interesting. Obviously, Caleb Foster could be in that mix. He didn't really show me much. I don't think he's the dude. But we'll see on that. All right. DeShaun, we just mentioned Shelten Henderson. He is not the only decommit in this class. You've got two other high-profile decommits at blue blood schools in this class. What on earth does it mean? Is it a new normal, or is it just a one-off coincidence for this year? We're going to have that conversation coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time. Look, there is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment, it feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app, they actually go down. They get lower as tip-off approaches, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. Now, here's why I really like Game Time. Not only can you get up to 60% off for sports, but also things like concerts, comedy theater, and so much more. I also like that they have all-in pricing, so you don't get to check out and you're like, oh my gosh, what are these 89 fees you're adding on here? You can just toggle the all-in price button and then you see the exact amount you're going to pay. How about this? The NBA playoffs are going on right now. I live about 3 hours from Oklahoma City. Tonight, Tuesday night, Grizz at Thunder. You can get tickets on Game Time. There's a 10% off ticket right now. That's $54 to get in the building. Oklahoma City won game one by 51 points, DeShaun. That's insane. And man, what a cool thing it would be to be in that building for game two tonight. Make sure, folks, you don't miss out and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. DeShaun, we've just been talking about Duke, and Duke recently had a decommit in the class of 2025 in the form of Shelten Henderson. We learned on Monday that he was actually committing to Miami, and Jay Lucas, the former assistant at Duke, who is now the head coach, stepping in for Jim Larinaga. My man, he's not the only guy. Last week, we learned that Darius Adams was decommitting from UConn, and Caden Lewis was decommitting from Kentucky. That is 3 high-profile players at 3 blue blood schools. I don't remember this volume of it. So, DeShaun, here's the question I want us to have now, or the conversation I want us to have now. Do you think this is like, it just happens sometimes, and sure, we had 3 guys, but it's happenstance? Or is this a sign of the times with transfer portal, and I kind of got recruited over, or I'm not going to have as much of a role as I thought, and so this is more of a new normal? Which way would you lean on that?
I think it's more new normal, to be honest with you. I think that what we're seeing right now, with it just being about 3 guys primarily, more so talking about, from blue blood schools, of course, all that kind of stuff is what's highlighting the conversation, is because of who the guys are, the talent, the amount of stars that they have that are coming behind their rankings, and just the programs, all the tradition that's prestige that's coming along with it. But I think we're just going to hear about this more and more and more. Fortunately for the players, I guess, and unfortunately for those who try to keep up with where guys are committing to. It's already hard enough to keep up with all the new conference realignments with, different schools going to being in different conferences, but now you got to keep up with the players even. So I think that it will more so be a new thing that is just going to be something else for us to kind of get adjusted to, acclimated to, just something else that's kind of on the plate. But while I definitely won't tell you that I love it, because I definitely don't. Some of it, I don't know if the cool kids are still saying, duck and smoke. I feel like that's probably old now, even though I probably just heard it for the first time about a couple weeks ago. For halfway facetiously speaking, by the way. But no, I think that sometimes we're getting to that point where guys almost have an excuse now to be able to duck competition that's coming in, by saying that guys were recruited over them, and just really lacking the competitive nature and competitive edge to be able to just, be held accountable, if you will, accept the responsibility that comes along with committing to a place. But if they can find their way out of it and maybe even be able to get a bag, now that's a whole nother conversation. The bag that comes along with that, I think, is something that, gives them that opportunity to be confident about exercising new options.
And I love that point, because it's like, if we're letting the upperclassmen do the same thing and go find a bag, it's like, how often do we see like guys already in college commit, like who recently did it? Decommitted from Trace and Eaglestaff recently decommitted from South Carolina, and just over the weekend committed to West Virginia, because it was like, I can, to your great point, I can go get a bigger bag by, forgive me, Lamont Paris, not playing for you at South Carolina, one of just 2 SEC schools to not make the NCAA tournament next year. Like, then why can't these guys do it? The incoming freshmen. And I think maybe people look at it and are like, I don't know, that feels weird because it's the incoming guys and we've just never seen it before. But to me, I'm like, if the older guys can do it, why can't the incoming freshmen do it too? That just makes sense to me.
No, it does. And it makes sense to me too. I mean, I know that it's a lot going on and it's a lot to keep up with and what have you, but that's the name of the game. As long as it's within all fairness, none of it is considered quote unquote cheating, if you will. Nothing is illegal by NCAA standards and rules, regulations, protocols. It's everything is fair game. And I think that when you have such situations that are like this and things that are put in place to allow the availability and flexibility for kids to be able to weigh those options, and not only that, but to also take advantage of such things, then it just, you tip your cap, and you just look forward to wherever they're going to be playing at. I mean, the unfortunate part about this is that, I'm sure at some point we'll have to find a cap somewhere for a lot of this, not just within NIL, but also within transfer portals.
Yep.
I remember at one point in time, Isaac, and I feel like his name was Alex Legion. I won't say in order where all he went to, but it just kind of started out as like, okay, I'm going to play at Michigan. He went from Michigan, I think, to Illinois, from Illinois to like Kentucky. And then there was like a Florida International in there somewhere. And it was like, this was almost like unheard of to a degree. Now it's a regular occurrence where you can almost expect it to happen with more than just one player.
And I like your point too. It's like, sure, like with these three guys we're talking about, Shelten Henderson, Darius Adams, and Caden Lewis, at 247, they're all top 35 in this class. Henderson's
Correct.
14, Adams 26, Lewis 35. But there's nothing guaranteed that these guys are going to make the league and make money. And so for a lot of college players, because of NIL, it's like this is the moment where you have the best earning power you might have in the entirety of your life. And I can't sit here in judgment because I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing to take care of myself and future generations of my family with literal generational changing money that I might not be able to get if I don't go get that bag right now. And I can't sit in judgment of that, man.
Well, especially if you know in your own heart of hearts, because I know everybody thinks that they're a pro. Everybody thinks that they're an NBA player and whatever else, what have you. But if you know in your true heart of hearts that you're probably not going to be a next level talking about NBA player, then why not take advantage of the opportunity that you have in front of you to make the most amount of money that you can? By the way, that doesn't mean you won't be a pro later. That just means after you get done basically what I call stealing money in a legal way, right? Then you go play international. It's tax-free
money in that too.
Some of the best players. I mean, obviously a lot of that depends on what country, which league, and all that good stuff. And but you have a good opportunity to make a good amount of money over there too. Some of this is more money than you're going to ever be able to make. I mean, think about it. For someone like a Hunter Dickinson, it made sense to why he was coming back. Even if we're talking about somebody who's a sure bet to be a star at the next level whenever she decided to leave. For Caitlin Clark, I mean, it's going to be there waiting for you. Why not go ahead and make as much money on this level? Zach Edey being another one of those players. Why not make the most money on this level as long as you can? And by the way, for all of those of which who say that they have kind of gotten out of touch, we'll just say out of touch with college basketball because it's so hard to, you don't get long enough to be able to learn about players and so forth. This actually helps players stay in school. Now you might have to keep up where they're going next year, but you have that opportunity to not only learn the name, but continue learning more about the player because they're staying in college. So no excuses for those who are not paying as much attention to college basketball as they try to say.
That's right. I just saw some Mutombo highlights literally before we logged on. And so I appreciate the finger wag in real time there, my man. By the way, on a Caden Lewis, I forgot to mention, but he was actually visiting University of Georgia on Monday. So we'll keep up with each of these guys. Obviously, as we said, Henderson has committed to Miami, but we'll wait to see where both Darius Adams and Caden Lewis wind up when it's all said and done. Now, speaking of guys that will probably make the NBA, Ian Jackson entered the transfer portal from North Carolina. And in probably the most commitment we've seen this entire transfer portal, he committed to St. John's and Rick Pitino on Monday. We'll talk about that and what role he might play for this team coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Prize Picks, baseball season is in full swing. DeShaun, my Braves are terrible, my dude. I don't know. How are the Tigers doing? I know you're a Tigers fan.
I can't tell you that they're doing the best, but you know what? I got a good feeling when it comes down to playoff time, they'll be ready when October rolls around.
I love it. Well, baseball is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on that action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you just pick more or less on at least 2-player stat projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, whatever it is, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm picking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run. That seems wise. And Shohei Ohtani back from paternity leave for more than 1 stolen base. It's that easy. Setting a lineup can take less than 60 seconds. And when you win, your payout is quick, it's safe, and most importantly to me, it's secure. You can also take advantage of promotions like Taco Tuesday. Today is Taco Tuesday, where Prize Picks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. So go ahead, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, on Monday, Ian Jackson, a transfer out of North Carolina after his freshman year, commits to St. John's. It makes all the sense in the world. He's up from that part of the country. In fact, there were rumors after he committed to North Carolina over Kentucky that Rick Pitino and St. John's were trying to worm in there a little bit and see if he was movable ahead of his freshman season. He wasn't, but he is now. Welcome to the transfer portal era. Now, DeShaun, here's the most interesting part of this, because the landing spot was like, no brainer.
Mm-hmm.
But Rick Pitino tweeted this out on Monday, which I love that this is the reality. Like we just got coaches tweeting about recruits and stuff. It's crazy. He tweets out, quote, "We had big shoes to fill at the point. Kadary Richmond, Davon Smith were awesome. The ball is now in the hands of our next great point guard. Let's go, Ian." End quote. DeShaun, I don't know how much Ian Jackson you watched this year.
Yeah.
He played a lot of basketball, not a lot of point guard, and had a negative assist to turnover ratio, 32 assists to 34 turnovers. The man can put the ball in the bucket, but point guard? Are you as confused on this as I am?
I definitely am. Because, I mean, listen, I don't know. Maybe they've got a deal worked out between one another for him to be able to play some point guard. Maybe he feels like that's where, he's best suited or what have you. While I respectfully disagree, I guess, I'm also, not a guy that have taken 6 different teams to the NCAA tournament and got national championships and all this other stuff at prestigious schools. I don't know if I'll go as far as saying that this is a mistake. Maybe he sees something within him that, I didn't see, or maybe he was used improperly by North Carolina, perhaps with Hubert Davis and those guys. That's a possibility, I guess. I don't love the idea again, but I'm willing to give it a chance to be able to see what it looks like for a few games, because I think it'll take more than just one game to try and see exactly what coach is seeing out there. But based off of the last thing I saw happen, there's definitely if you're Ian Jackson, you definitely want to make sure that you're on the same page with coach being the best player on the team and knowing exactly what your role is, because if not, you'll probably be sitting down next to him and not really have a good explanation as to why.
Dude, thank you for that. I still don't know why Rick Pitino did that with RJ Lewis, man. That was nonsensical. But again, as you said, it's like he is one of the greatest coaches in the history of college basketball. So I'm going to put that respect on his name. I will say this, though, regardless of what position Ian Jackson plays, this St. John's offense is going to be very, very good. It seems like they bring back Zuby Ejiofor. They get Bryce Hopkins coming over from Providence, assuming he can stay healthy for once in his life. Osiah Sellers comes over from Stanford, and you got Josan Sanone coming from Arizona State. So, I just like a lot of the pieces. I don't know that fit for him at point guard. It just seems to make more sense to have him at the 2 with somebody else running the show, so he can just do what he does, drain the ball from far away, get in, out in transition, and score in those ways. That's what seems to make more sense to me.
Yeah, it baffles me a little bit. I sometimes question a little bit about what kind of moves they're making in terms of the size that I think that they will kind of need to add a little bit to be able to be competitive again in the Big East, especially because they are the ones with the big red target bullseye on their back or what have you. But I think that he's equipped for figuring it out as a head coach. But no, I like this move for Ian Jackson, obviously, not just because of his familiarity with going back home and all that good stuff, but just his style of play to me. And I feel like his approach to the game, it kind of fits a little bit more St. John's basketball than it does North Carolina.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. One thing he's definitely going to have to learn to do is play higher level defense, because Rick Pitino will demand that of him. And if that's not going, we'll see what happens. Now, one final point we want to hit on today is kind of staying in a North Carolina Tar Heels kind of conversation here. And this one goes to Ven-Allen Lubin, who was the Tar Heels starting center down the stretch of the season. Carolina brings in Henry Vasar, the big 7-footer from Arizona. It seems like Ven-Allen Lubin was going to be the backup. But then on Monday, there were these rumblings that Ven-Allen Lubin was going to enter the transfer portal. And then it's announced that he is entering the transfer portal. And I know just because I cover the Tar Heels, a lot of North Carolina folks were up in arms and very sad about this. But then Ven-Allen Lubin himself tweets this out, DeShaun, quote, "Before anybody jumps to the wrong conclusion, I'm letting everyone know that I am entering the transfer portal with full intent on returning to UNC. My action relates to the complexities surrounding the possible approval of the pending NCAA settlement," end quote. Like, there we go. Like, a big word salad there for us. Basically, here's what I'm learning and taking away from this. Part of Ven-Allen Lubin's NIL agreement with North Carolina includes a third-party NIL thing that is potentially up in the air of if it will still be in alignment once the NCAA house settlement is approved and finalized, whatever it is, because of having to approve all of the third-party NIL agreements that you have. Will it pass muster? We don't know. So to protect himself and to be able to kind of have some movability based on whatever happens when that eventually comes down, he enters the transfer portal before the deadline later today with every intention of the world of staying at North Carolina. Welcome to 2025 college basketball, my man. What are we doing, DeShaun? So basically, let's sum it up this way. Ven-Allen Lubin enters the transfer portal from North Carolina so he can stay at North Carolina. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
It's just as confusing as probably any in all of this stuff, to be honest with you. And I think he was solid for North Carolina. I mean, first of all, you mentioned he was the center for North Carolina. You let everybody else tell it they didn't have a center. They had nobody in the front court. They were playing point guards in the front court because that's all I ever heard all season. But nonetheless, I like the production that he brought. He was definitely appeared to be very raw. But I think it would be good for North Carolina to be able to bring not only some experience as a college basketball player back, but somebody who knows, understands, or overstands rather, what's expected at North Carolina. And I think that he can help out, Caleb Wilson, along with some of the other guys that are going to be coming in this year. But all of that really was just confusing. And I don't think that it helps North Carolina the least bit with what they are trying to do going forward. But I think it would be good to be able to see him in a North Carolina uniform again, so that we can see what happens for him next year and how much he can, how much production that they'll get from him, how much contribution he'll be able to bring to the table.
Yeah, I think it'll be, if he comes back for sure, it'll help North Carolina's front court depth in immense ways get back to what we typically expect to see from North Carolina basketball. Sure. He's not the only guy to make interesting portal decisions. Ian Scheflin, who has no eligibility left, enters the transfer portal. There's all sorts of stuff up in the air with these settlement cases. So we're going to unpack the Scheflin of it all later this week on the show. So stay tuned for that. Folks, thanks so much for being with us on the show today. Again, I said it earlier, please make sure you go follow DeShaun on Twitter at Tate's Takes Hoops. Got it that time. Boom. No word salad in my mouth. I got that tongue untwisted, baby. DeShaun, great to have you on, man. Looking forward to doing it again more throughout the offseason. And then obviously as we get into the 25-26 college basketball season, it can't come soon enough. If you've not subscribed to the show on YouTube, please make sure you do that now so you don't miss a second of the show coming at you all 5 days of the week. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, that link is down in the show notes. Make sure you hop into that. It's free to join, and we'd love to have you hang out in there with us. As always, got to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Shouts to McBruins. And until tomorrow's show, peace.